There are moments in history that freeze time, moments so shocking that even the air seems unsure whether to move. And on that cold, razor-sharp morning, inside the towering marble walls of the Royal High Court, the world witnessed one. It started with a gasp, not from the public galleries, not from the paparazzi lining the streets, not even from the judge, who had spent months delivering decisions with the emotional range of a brick. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The gasp came from Queen Camilla herself. One trembling hand went to her mouth. The other clutched the rail of the defendant's stand as if it were the only thing preventing her from being swallowed by the earth. And then came the words, the verdict that detonated through the courtroom with the force of 1,000 headlines. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Guilty of causing the death of Princess Diana. A verdict no one had expected. A verdict no one had prepared for. A verdict that would reshape the monarchy forever. Queen Camilla's eyes widened. Her knees buckled. And then, in a surreal slow-motion collapse that felt more like a scene from a courtroom drama than real life, she fell. People screamed. Reporters scrambled. The judge slammed his gavel so hard it cracked. And the world, glued to screens, breath held, watched a queen fall not just to the floor, but from the highest pedestal of power. But how did we get here? What chain of secrets, testimonies, and revelations led to the most explosive verdict in royal history? Let's rewind. Because this story didn't start in a courtroom. It started with a whisper. How did a decades-old tragedy return to the courtroom with such force? For years, Princess Diana's death remained wrapped in a fog of grief, speculation, and unanswered questions. The official inquiry concluded it was a tragic accident. The public moved on, or tried to. But then came the envelope. A single, unmarked envelope delivered anonymously to a journalist known for exposing political scandals. Inside it were three things. A handwritten letter. A photograph never before seen by the public. A name underlined twice. Camilla. The journalist, skeptical but intrigued, pushed the story forward. One leak led to another. One question turned into 10. And before the palace could stop the domino effect, the case was reopened. The courtroom became the new battleground. And Queen Camilla was thrust into a spotlight she never wanted. But what exactly was in that envelope? Why did it name her? And who sent it? We'll get there. But first, the world needed to prepare for the trial of the century, because the prosecution came armed with something far more dangerous than evidence. A narrative. A narrative that tied Camilla to Princess Diana's final year in ways no one could have predicted. The kind of narrative that sparks doubts even where certainty once lived. And as the case built momentum, the public became divided. Is this justice? Is this a witch hunt? Is this the truth finally resurfacing? Or is someone setting the queen up? By the time the trial began, the entire world was watching, not out of loyalty, but out of morbid curiosity. And with each passing day, the courtroom felt less like a place of law and more like a theater. But the verdict didn't truly begin there. It began with a witness no one expected. What happens when someone who was never meant to speak finally does? The courtroom was packed. Every seat taken. Every camera pointed. Every breath held. And then the doors opened for the witness who would change everything. A former palisade. A woman who had worked in the background for decades, unnoticed, unheard, and, until now, unseen. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. She spoke about overheard conversations, poisonous rivalries, moments of jealousy that simmered beneath the polished surface of royal life. It wasn't hatred, she said. It was fear. Fear that Diana would take the monarchy somewhere Camilla couldn't follow. Her testimony painted a picture of two women trapped in a centuries-old institution built like a cage. Only one fit the mold. Only one obeyed the rules. Only one threatened to change everything. And the tension? It wasn't whispered. It was palpable. But then came the bombshell. The detail that sent reporters racing to their phones. The aide claimed Camilla had been briefed on Diana's movements the night of the fatal accident. Briefed earlier than the palace admitted. Briefed privately. Was it true? Was it misremembered? Was it weaponized? The defense dismissed it as confusion. The prosecution called it motive. And the public? They called it the missing piece. But here's the real question. Was the aide telling the truth or telling a story? Because her testimony opened a door the palace had kept shut for years, the door to the hidden realities of life behind the gilded walls. What came next would push that door wide open. What if a message from the past becomes evidence in the present? If there was one thing Diana left behind, it was her words. Her letters, emotional, vulnerable, unfiltered, had always been part of the public fascination. But no one knew one particular letter existed. No family member, no archivist, not even her sons. Yet there it was, in the mysterious envelope. The letter was short, painful, and chilling. She wrote that she feared an orchestrated event, that she sensed danger from someone closer than the world thinks, that she hoped her fears were wrong, but felt they weren't. It was the kind of letter that, once read, could never be unread. The prosecution treated it like prophecy. The defense called it paranoia. But the public? They called it truth. And in a trial where emotion outweighed logic, that letter hit harder than any forensic analysis could. But who had kept it hidden? And why deliver it now? That mystery hung over the courtroom like a storm cloud, one the defense tried desperately to clear, until the next revelation made it impossible. What was captured in that frame? The courtroom darkened. A single image appeared on the screen, a photo taken in Paris, one night before Diana's accident. And in the background, blurry, yes, but recognizable, was Camilla, not near Diana, not speaking to her, not confronting her, just there, in Paris, the night before Diana. Coincidence? Convenience? Conspiracy? The courtroom erupted. The defense scrambled to explain. A private trip. A coincidence. A case of mistaken identity. The prosecution didn't even need to say anything. The picture said it all. But the real twist? That photograph hadn't come from a journalist. Not from a paparazzo. Not from an intelligence leak. It came from someone inside the palace. Someone with access. Someone with motive. Someone who wanted the world to see. But who? How does a trial built on suspicion end with a verdict built on impact? 7 months. 42 witnesses. 83 hours of jury deliberation. And then, finally, the verdict. Guilty. The world erupted in confusion. Shock. Relief. Rage. But nothing compared to Camilla's reaction. Her breath vanished. Her face drained of color. Her posture collapsed inward as though gravity had tripled. And then she fell, silently, heavily, devastatingly, to the floor. Security rushed forward. Paramedics followed. The judge called order, but order was impossible. Because the monarch of the United Kingdom had just been declared responsible for the world's most controversial tragedy. Not by official history, not by royal decree, but by a jury of 12 ordinary citizens. But here's the twist. The verdict didn't end the story. It started one. Why did this fall feel symbolic? Queen Camilla's collapse spread across social media within seconds. Clips went viral. Commentators dissected every frame. Psychologists debated whether it was shock, guilt, fear, or pure disbelief. But in the noise, one fundamental truth emerged. For the first time since Diana's death, the monarchy felt fragile. Not because of what happened that night in 1997, but because of what was happening now. People asked, is this justice? Is this revenge? Is this history correcting itself? Or is this the greatest framing in royal history? The collapse wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. It was generational. It was the crack in the armor that royalty was never supposed to show. And the public, emotional, divided, electrified, sensed a shift. But what they didn't know was that the most dramatic moment was still ahead. Who sent the envelope? That question would blow this entire case open. What secret was worth destroying a queen? After months of silence, secrecy, and speculation, a single confession shattered the mystery. The envelope came from someone in the royal family. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, but out of fear that the truth, whatever it really was, would never come out otherwise. And when the name finally surfaced, it wasn't who the world expected. It wasn't Prince Harry. It wasn't Prince William. It wasn't a bitter aide or a rogue official. It was someone whose loyalty had always been unquestioned. Someone who had lived long enough to see every royal chapter unfold. Someone who believed the monarchy needed cleansing, not protecting. Someone who had everything to lose and nothing to gain. Their identity became the final explosive twist, one that changed the story from guilty verdict to royal reckoning. But that part, that's the cliffhanger. because the trial may be over, but the consequences are just beginning. This fictional narrative isn't just courtroom drama. It's a mirror reflecting how history, power, truth, and perception collide. It shows how unresolved grief can resurface decades later, how stories evolve, how institutions crack, how secrets refuse to stay buried. And most importantly, it reminds us that even the most powerful figures sit on foundations built of public trust. And when that trust breaks, everything trembles.